All over Seton Hall's campus, we've heard about the basketball teams or soccer or baseball, but there has been one team that has been very successful on this campus over the past year, and this team is also a championship winning team. And of course, I'm talking about Seton Hall's esports team. They are currently the Big East champions of the ESL Collegiate spring season, and we have a member of that championship winning team here, Jacob Black. So, Jacob, first and foremost, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. No complaints here.
Did I give you enough credit in that intro?
Oh, more than enough, trust me.
So to get this interview, flowing, first and foremost, I have to ask you, where are you from and how did you end up at Seton Hall?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but I'll give you the director's cut, so to say. I guess that's usually longer, but I'll give you the condensed version. Um, I'm from New Jersey in Monmouth County. I started off at a community college called Brookdale. Graduated 2 years there. Had a bunch of friends one of my best friends went to Seton Hall, and it was kind of a backup school for me. Didn't get into my other schools. The one school I did get into didn't accept my credits, so I ended up at Seton Hall, living with one of my best friends. And my best friend just so happens to be also the manager and one of the founders of this esports program. His name's Christian Cardiello, and yeah, he's kind of how I ended up at Seton Hall a little bit.
So I guess touching on that video game part of it a little bit, when did you first develop that passion for video games and when did you realize that you could take it to a competitive level?
Wow. Well, as a kid, I've always been playing games. I think they're so much fun. I think that I'm a big fan of like strategy games, and it really gets my mind working. Like I've played chess every day for the past like 4 years. I just like things that really get me thinking, right? Um, and specifically with League of Legends, I've been playing since beta, which came out 11 years ago. So I've been playing the game for 11 years, and it's been a major part of my life. And I'm also a big sports fanatic too. So between playing basketball or football or baseball, then going home, then playing more video games, and I just wanted that competitive edge. And I think a competitive scene is what makes me a better um, player in any sport.
So to talk about your best friend, I mean, I feel like he was definitely probably the one that kind of got you to the esports league at Seton Hall. So can you touch on how that transition was and how he kind of brought you into that?
Sure. I mean, just because he was my best friend doesn't mean I had a free free pass onto the team. Um, just like any team, whether it be basketball or anything, there are tryouts, and the team itself does do scouting, and it also does recruiting, and you can also try to walk on. My friend knew I played the game. I actually had introduced him to the game when we were much younger, because we're also from the same hometown. I forgot to mention. Um, so he was like, "Hey, would you be interested in trying out for the League of Legends team?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Yeah, I was playing League so much at the time, I thought, couldn't hurt. And then I ended up trying out and making the team my junior year, my first semester at Seton Hall.
So talk a little bit more about that progression, starting off, as starting off in the league and then working up to the position that you were to be able to be a starter on the team.
Yeah, well, just like, oh God, yeah, it's tough. Just like any sport, practice makes perfect. And if I told you how many hours I had in this game, you'd be thinking I could do so much more with it with my time. Um, but yeah, I mean, whenever I had free time, whenever I was done with homework or just wanted to relax, I'd hop into a game and I'd practice. And anything that you do for 11 plus years, I kind of relate it when I explain to my parents about the game. I tell them it's like riding a bike to me at this point because I've been doing it for so long. It's just one of those things. And yeah, I just put in the time. And then there's various positions in the game you could try out for, and I tried out for one of the positions, and I was very lucky to make it.
So, just can you talk a little bit more about that practice? Because of course, Seton Hall had that new facility in, and if I
Yes.
remember correctly, I think there is actual practice hours for League of Legends, so
Yes,
you
there
guys can
are.
play as a team. So, can you just talk a little bit more about those practices, kind of leading up to a game?
Sure. I mean, just to give you a little insight on just my experience within the Seton Hall scene, junior year, made the team, played for the team the fall and spring semester. Then that summer, I was actually planning on taking a break from the game because it had been 10 years at that point. And they had during the summer they had a team with some incoming freshmen, and they were practicing, and everything was great. And they called me up, and they said, "Hey, one of our players isn't working out. Would you be able to fill in for a different position?" Um, and I said yes. And whenever it was almost like in basketball, you have centers, you have power forwards, you got point guards, and they all have their own little niche roles within the game, and they all have their own jobs to do. And it's very similar to League of Legends. Everyone has a job to do, and the positions I had been playing for the team, mid lane and ADC, AD carry, they they're more of a carry oriented role. They do a lot of the heavy lifting. But they wanted me to try for the support role, so I said yes, and I spent many hours practicing that specific role. Then going into that 2019 fall semester, um, the gaming room itself was beginning to take shape. They were beginning construction on it. Then we actually got full access to it at the end of the fall semester or the beginning of the spring semester. Beginning of the spring semester. And then, yeah, I mean, for the practice hours, it's a lot like any other D1 sport. I mean, it's funny. I always laugh calling an esport a D1 sport, but I definitely consider myself during that time a D1 athlete. I mean, I was spending upwards of like over at least 36 hours, 48 hours a week just playing that game. And it doesn't seem like much, but uh, that's not including we that's not including just bonding with the team or researching the game or even there's VOD reviews. There's VOD reviews in this game just like there are in football or basketball. You got to research the people you're playing against. Um, yeah, and when it came down to just playing in the gaming room, we had set hours. You had to be there. If you weren't there, you got on probation. You weren't allowed on the team. You weren't allowed to practice in there. Yeah, it was very serious.
So now let's touch a little bit more on this season. So in the regular season, if I saw it correctly, I think you started off 3-4 or something like that to start off the regular season, and was able to get your way into that fourth seed to be able to play in the playoffs. So how was it, starting off that on the wrong foot, for lack of better terms, and then being able to kind of work your way and get into the playoffs?
Well, the start of the season for us was very interesting. We won the first 3 or 4 games. We were at full strength. We felt great. We're in the gaming room. We had momentum. And then we had spring break. Compared to other teams, our spring break was the first to happen. We had a very early spring break for Seton Hall compared to some other Big East schools. And like they had to start playing games. The team had to start playing games with subs. Like I was in Spain for a week. Our jungler Ryan was in Canada for a week just because we had plans and we just weren't able to play. So we got back from spring break and then the coronavirus outbreak hit. So we were kind of disappointed with the season. We were like 3-4 or 4-4, and we were kind of mad because we weren't playing at full strength, and we kind of got screwed over a little with the spring break. So they had canceled the season for a little bit. Then they messaged all the teams and they were able to bring it back. And when they brought it back, we were very confident that we could win out pretty much the rest of the season and get a playoff spot.
So going into the playoffs now, you were the fourth seed. Villanova was the 3 seed, and both you guys advanced, having the 2 lower seeds. So that must have been a very interesting situation to have that the 2 lower seeds were the ones that are able to advance to the championship.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the 1 seed was St. John's, and they played very well throughout the season, but they had lost a player due to coronavirus. But I thought they were still a very strong team that we played. Um, the issue that they had, I actually watched one of their interviews with ESL, is that they said they really didn't know what to do against us, and I think that was one of our big things going into, is we could do so much during the game, we could do so many different things. And Villanova beating DePaul, I always, in my mind, I think DePaul is one of the top teams in Big East. I would say they're 1-2 with us. Them losing to Villanova in a 3-game series was extremely surprising. And then it was kind of funny when we saw who we were going to play in the finals, which was Nova. Everyone kind of breathed a sigh of relief, because we kind of wanted this. We really wanted to beat Nova. They're our rivals. Yeah, after we lost the first game in the finals, is a best of 5, and morale was low. And then we reversed sweep them, so to say, and we won 3 straight to take the championship.
So, I mean, you kind of touched on it, and it was one of the questions that I did have, but
Oh.
beating Villanova had to feel good, didn't it?
Oh, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Within the whole Big East community, ESL collegiate community, everyone's so nice. The players are great, but then Villanova has a lot of trash talk. They're the only team that has trash talk in the entire tournament. So they're always kind of the team to beat, and it always feels good to beat a trash talker.
So I don't know what I expected. I felt like St. John's would probably been the team that would trash talk a little bit more, but
Really?
to hear that Villanova is the
Yeah.
one that really comes across. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is suspected a little bit. So,
Not saying that Villanova players are bad people. They're just very confident in their gameplay, and they're very confident they want to win, and that's all right. But we try not to do any trash talking.
and I mean, at the end of the day, the play is really what matters, and you're able to get
Exactly. Like
the
any
Big
sport.
East championship. So, after winning the Big East championship, and I think last year was kind of like this, it's similar to basketball where you win, the conference championship, and then you go into like a national tournament, right?
Yeah, unfortunately for the League of Legends, when you win Big East, or you place first or second, you get into the countrywide tournament, nationwide tournament, where you play other teams like Big Ten teams, SEC teams, everything. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, they decided to not do that. But luckily for us, the scholarship money was divided between um, each of the groups, like Big East, Big Ten. So everyone got their own portion, and then they played for it, and that's what the championship was for.
So essentially, the championship was for a cut of the money. So if another team in the Big East would have won, then they would have had a cut of the money.
Yeah. Only first place got a cut. So we're very fortunate. Everybody in our program is getting a little bit of scholarship money for playing a video game, which is awesome. And it, for a couple of our guys, it really does help.
So now, touching on the outreach that happened with it, of course you had the gaming lab, but you also was featured on the Seton Hall magazine, the front
Yes.
page. So how was it for your team to kind of now get a lot of this acknowledgement with the team?
Yeah, well, it was always Christian's goal originally when he was a freshman at Seton Hall. He envisioned this. Victor, our student advisor, one of the faculty members, he always envisioned this even when he was a student at Seton Hall. And through their hard work, we got to this point where we have a gaming room and we have support from the school, and we have this whole program that we can build off of. And I'm a senior, unfortunately, so I won't be able to have a part of the gaming room anymore or anything like that. But it feels really good to I mean, the Rocket League had won a Big East championship as well, but it feels good for us to win a Big East championship, stake a claim within the Big East, and show the school that this is this is the future. This is a competitive scene where millions of people watch, and it's a force to be reckoned with.
Now, I do want to ask a couple of questions about you, the student, but before I do that, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't talk about your gaming name. So you go by Numb Gums when you do play a League of Legends, and I need to know the history behind that name.
So it actually goes back to when I started playing the game. My original name for the first 10 years of the game, actually, I had this previous name at Seton Hall. My name was Nummy Warrior, Nummy Warrior. And I came up with that when I was a kid, when I was 10 years old, starting playing this game. I had a blanket, like a childhood blanket, and its name was Nummy. So as a kid, put Warrior after it, we got a name.
Makes everything just seem cooler.
Exactly. Put anything after it. But this past season, I just felt like it was time for a name change, and I thought, for the ESL announcers, I think a short, sweet name is easy to say and can pop up a lot when a stream's happening. So I thought of Num Gums. I shortened it. I made it a little cute. Then people started calling me Num Guns because I flexed on a couple ESL streams. The nickname kind of just took off.
So now, I mean, honestly, I don't know what I expected from a story, but that is about as good of a story as I
Yeah.
could have imagined. So
Yeah.
now, Jacob, the student, like you said, you graduated, excuse me,
Yeah.
from Seton Hall. What degree did you get?
I have a bachelor's degree in environmental studies with a focus in environmental policy.
So, what are a couple of things that you wish to do with that degree?
Oh boy, I mean the number one goal, right, is to help the environment. There's so many different ways I could do that with this degree. I could even go back to school and and become an environmental lawyer if I wanted to. Not that that's in my future at the moment, but um, right now I'm looking at. Well, it's hard to get a job in this economy at the moment, but at the moment, there's so many options. I could go into private industry. I could work for an environmental department in like a power company, trying to make them as efficient as possible. I could go into some supply chain things. I could go into nonprofit work. Really anything right now. I'm just kind of waiting for the craziness of the world to die down before I make any final decisions.
So, outside of esports, and I mean, you talked about a lot of hours that you put in it, but I'm pretty sure you had, some hours to have to yourself. What are some other things that you did on campus or during your free time?
Oh boy, big things on campus was I was part of a fraternity. Um, I'm part of Phi Delta Theta. Um, I joined the fraternity my second semester at Seton Hall just because I was friends with so many of the guys there, and they do such great community work, and we raise so much money for ALS, for Lou Gehrig's disease, and I just wanted to help the community. I wanted a guiding hand to help the community, and that's what the fraternity was for me. I also, went to the gym a lot. I was always on the basketball courts in the gym. I think I was there almost every day if I wasn't playing or doing homework. And other than that, I just had an apartment off campus, and I just kind of, try not to do too much. I try to keep my hobbies to a minimum.
I guess just a couple of final questions. Where do you see esports going in the future? Because we've seen over the past 5 years that it's exploded in the terms of how marketable it is. So how do you see it coming, 5 years down the line?
Well, it's kind of a two-faced question. I think esports in general, I think it's going to take off, and I think it's going to take off specifically because, like, if you look at professional League of Legends, or if you look at professional Dota 2, or CS:GO or Rocket League, there are there are players making millions of dollars playing video games, and I mean that there's a lot of pressure on that. They're the face of the company. They have all these sponsors, right? But another side of that is the gaming industry, or the game industry needs to create more and more competitive games for people to play in, there's a balance between making a competitive game that people want to watch and making a competitive game that people want to play professionally. I think League of Legends does a great job with that. So does Rocket League. Rocket League, for instance, is just soccer but with flying cars, right? It's very easy to understand. You're just trying to score a goal. League of Legends, obviously a little more in depth of a game, so much more going on, so many little intricacies, so many different characters. But people love playing it in their free time, and playing it with friends, and I think that's really important. Just playing with friends, and yeah, I mean, I think the industry is going to take off. It's really anyone's guess at this point.
So now, final question: do you have anything that you would like to add in this?
Um, Gosh, I'd like to shout out everyone who watches me play a video game semi-professionally. It's insane that I have friends and family that support me and watch me and are trying to learn what I do. Um, just if you're thinking about getting into the esports scene, if you're from Seton Hall, go check out Gaming Sector. make yourself known. Don't be afraid to go out there and make friends. It's so much fun to play video games, and it's even more fun to play with your friends.
Well, Jacob, once again, I'd like to thank you for coming in and doing this interview. I know it's we're doing it through Zoom, but we're able to at least get it done, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Of course. Thank you so much, man.
Well, and again, thank you to everybody who listened. Make sure you follow our social media at WSOU Sports on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I mean, Jacob, do you have any social media you want to shout out?
Oh, sure, yeah. My Twitter is at numgums. My Instagram is Jake. Oh, follow my eating Instagram, Jacob Eats Food 27. I just eat food like a sloppy maniac. Do that.
And make sure you also follow the esports club, SHU_esports, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad I got it off the top of my head. But once again,
I don't know if I could.
I had to make sure I did my research for this. But once
Yes,
again, thank you for everything, and make sure you keep up to date with more stuff.